we're joined from Marbella by Mr. Meher Nicholas Fursley, the director of the EU ASEAN Center. Mr. Fursley, welcome to In Focus. Can the MED9 truly unify Europe's southern flank on Gaza, or will divisions persist beneath the surface?
I'm delighted to join you today from the western part of the European MED9, which is Andalusia, more specifically Marbella. So it's a topical geographic locale. But geography apart, the answer to your question is no. The main reason is share of voice, political share of voice. So today, yes, there is that MED9 meeting. It's all good, right? But in 3 days, precisely in Brussels, the European capital, there is the European Council, the Euro Council meeting. And this is the big meeting determining the future of Europe today. So it overshadows, mechanically, it overshadows the Cyprus, the meeting today of the MED9 leaders, sadly, and the Slovenian presidency of the MED9 and the Cyprus government, and to a lesser extent, the French and Italian government, they're trying to show unity and decisiveness when it comes to Gaza, but really their heart is elsewhere, right? Their heart is in Brussels, and there's a reason for that. When was the MED9 group founded? It was founded precisely 12 years ago, and initially it was like a Spanish, Italian, French initiative to give more weight to the south of the European Union, and it worked for just 5 or 6 years. So from 2013 to 2019, the MED9 played its role, but sadly, from 2019 onward, the MED9 wings were clipped. And why did the MED9 lose its power within the EU framework? For a simple reason. Ursula von der Leyen, she came to power in the year 2019, and she is obsessed with Northern and Eastern Europe to the extent that she despises, sadly, Ursula von der Leyen despises, Spain, France, Italy, Slovenia, Cyprus, Greece. It's horrible. And the European Union is supposed to be like a pan-European project, and it's supposed to focus mostly on economic, financial, and commercial issues.
Yes.
And defense and foreign policy are supposed to be secondary. And what did Ursula von der Leyen do in the past 3 years? Profiting from Russia's invasion of eastern Ukraine, she completely shifted the policy discourse of the EU itself away from the core constitutional objectives. There is an EU constitution, it's called the Lisbon-Maastricht framework. New powers for herself, and she refocused the energy, the resources, the time, the policy making of the EU on defense and foreign policy, which are supposed to be secondary issues. She completely neglected economic growth and trade and financial issues, and she also neglected the Middle East and the south of Europe. She couldn't care less. So for all these reasons, sadly, the efforts, of Slovenia and Cyprus, I'm afraid, will not amount to much.
Well, keeping in mind that sentiment of Ursula von der Leyen towards the MED9 countries and the bloc as a whole, do you think Cyprus' 6-point Gaza plan offer is a realistic path to reconstruction? Do you think it would be then taken seriously and backed by the European Union, or is it mostly symbolic?
Personally, I hope so, right? So personally, I hope so. I wish that the Cyprus plan, which is backed by Greece, by Croatia, by Italy, by France, by Portugal, by Spain, it's good, I wish it had more weight. Sadly, once again, we will see, but in 3 days, they are meeting in Brussels, all of them, the 27 member states, and I can bet you that, Gaza, the Middle East, the West Bank, Palestine, Israel, will be a tiny footnote when the real decision makers meet in Brussels on the 23rd of October. So it will be very small on the agenda. It will be a tiny piece, and they will focus, as usual, 95% of their time and energy on Ukraine, right? Which is crazy because it is not a central issue for the EU. Because once again, constitutionally, legally, the EU is supposed to focus mostly on economic, investment, trade issues. And there's a cruel irony because if you read the agenda of the EU meeting in Brussels in 3 days, officially in the agenda, the two main issues on paper, that's what they say. That's what Ursula von der Leyen says, right? You can read it on the internet. Officially, the two main topics are Ukraine and economic competitiveness, and far behind, far below is Gaza. But I can bet you that even though they are saying that they will allocate equal time to economic competitiveness and Ukraine, I can bet you that they will focus everything on Ukraine and they will ignore European economic competitiveness. So what I'm coming at, if you cannot even defend your own economy, if you cannot, now GDP growth in the Eurozone is 0.2% annually. It's a disaster. Inflation is high. GDP growth is equal to zero. So it's an economic collapse. And here she is, here they are meeting in Brussels to discuss Siberia, Eastern Ukraine, whatever, completely neglecting their own economy. So when you neglect your own home, Europe, you cannot credibly say, I'm going to help Gaza and Jericho and East Jerusalem, because if you can't even help Paris and Milan and Rome, how can you credibly say, I will help the Palestinians? Of course not.
Mm-hmm. Well, with the presence of King Abdullah II, is the European Union treating Jordan as a strategic partner or just a buffer?
That is good. So I've been very critical, as you know, in the past 10 minutes, very critical of Emmanuel Macron, Ursula von der Leyen, the Europeans, but it's the only good thing. It is the only good thing. I think the presence of His Royal Highness King Abdullah ibn al-Hussein is great. It's overdue. I think they should have done it earlier. It's coming a little late, but I think it's great. And I think Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the Emirates played a big part because the Saudis, the Emiratis, and the Egyptians, to their credit, have insisted that Jordan should not be marginalized. And it's good to involve His Royal Highness King Abdullah because, of course, Jordan is an essential part, and it's impossible to defend Palestinian civilians, be they in the West Bank or Gaza Strip, without backing Jordan. I think Jordan was very much neglected abusively and abused, not only neglected, but Jordan had, since the start of the Gaza crisis, I think the Jordanians have been neglected and abused verbally and humiliated. It's a shame. I think Europe needs to back Jordan because without a stable and viable, state called Jordan, the whole area could be destabilized. Look at the map. Jordan is really at the crossroads of the northern part of the Arabian Peninsula, Iraq and Palestine. So if Jordan is unstable, if Jordan is destabilized, the whole Middle East will be destabilized. So it's a poor country. They don't have a lot of resources. They don't have a lot of money, but they need our support. And Europe should absolutely back Jordan because it's essential for the stability of the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Well, can Southern Europe reshape the EU's migration policy from the crisis response to long-term partnerships with Africa?
Here, I would say it's a big mess because of, what is the essence of management? Be it, political management, if you're like the prime minister or the president, or be it, private sector management, if you're the chief executive of a big company. What is the essence of your job? It's focus, right? So you cannot tackle 5, 10, 20 issues in parallel. You have to make choices. You have to focus. Otherwise, you disperse and you lose your energy, right? It's a very simple rule, right? So Europe now is focusing crazily, excessively. So they're focusing, if you look at the agenda of the European Council meetings in Berlin, Brussels, Copenhagen in the past 3 years, 95% of the time they have spent, the presidents and the prime ministers of the 27 EU member states, they have devoted 95% of their time on Eastern Ukraine. That is crazy because they are neglecting the well being of their own people, they are neglecting their own economy, and of course, they are neglecting more important issue. And you are right, immigration, illegal immigration, is a much more important issue for Europe, I'm sorry, than Ukraine or Siberia or Russia. And here, who's paying the price? Well, it is the MED9. So the MED9 countries, Cyprus, France, Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Slovenia, they are paying the price of that illegal immigration. And people, once again, people in Poland, Ukraine, Ursula von der Leyen, they couldn't care less. They're saying, let the Spanish, let the Italian, let the French deal with it. It's horrible, and it's tearing down. It's tearing down at the fabric of European unity itself.
Yes. Mr. Meher Nicholas Fursley, the director of the EU ASEAN Center, thank you very much, sir, for your insights.